in a time where information is constant. Headlines refresh every minute, notifications never stop. Breaking news breaks hourly. And most people don't feel informed. They feel inflamed, exhausted, on edge. The problem isn't awareness. The problem is overexposure without integration. Being informed is healthy. Being possessed is not. Today, we're talking about how to stay engaged without surrendering your nervous system to all the content that's being presented to you. My name is Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by Justin Gates, the man, the myth, the legend.
The host with the most?
The host with the most.
Thing, and mine says the host with the most.
It's how he had to label himself. He won't do anything else. It's okay, I'm that guy, so it all works out. This is the New Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the New Ashla Podcast, home of spirituality, psychology, philosophy, where we try to help guide you into this crazy world we live in nowadays. Find your center. This season, we're focusing on consciousness and how to help yourself separate from your mind, from all the chaos around you, so that you can live as authentically and as fulfilled as you possibly can. Today, we're diving into news, which is something we try to avoid talking about on this podcast. There's so much out there right now.
Well, for sure, the subject of the news, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a really big reason for that, because the news is it's designed to stress us out and make us right? Because I was just going to say, because naturally we all kind of already suffer this feeling that we have to try to help the world, save the world, and when they just hit us on all sides, so they take advantage of that, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's the rule of thumb when it comes to writing articles or doing anything is that if it bleeds, it reads. So they're not looking to instill hope. They're looking for engagement. They're hoping to flare people up, get them involved, get them diving into the content and feeling appalled or offended.
If you want good news, I'll give you a good place to go right off the bat. www.newashla.com. Those blogs are the best. I know the guy that writes them. I know the guys that write them. They're pretty cool.
They know what they're talking about, it seems.
I think so. Yeah. I promise you, they won't separate you from your family and everyone else that disagrees with you. But anyways, it's really rough because the news. But let's not get it messed up. Let's just call it out for what it is right now. Already, the news is designed to make money. It's a commercial industry. That's what it is. Right. If you can rage bait somebody, you can make money. That's just that. And it wasn't always that way, but it's turned into that over the last probably 20 years or something, maybe more. I don't know. I just know that I used to watch the news, especially as a kid, because all our parents and our grandparents watched the news, right? And the guy would just get there and say, look, homies, this is what happened. You know, you got to figure out how you feel about it. They didn't tell you how to feel about it. They didn't give you opinions. They didn't tell you to go hate your neighbor on one side or the other. They just said, this happened, let's figure this out. Yeah, but it's not that anymore. Everybody has a damn opinion now.
We've been drifting more and more into consumer America, which I think really has led to so many people discovering their voice, discovering monetary paths, and where they can feel empowered, they can feel like they have a voice, they can feel like they're important, and they feed this content out there, whether it's based on their own biases, their own concerns, and none of this I'm saying is coming from a bad place or a manipulative place, but it's so saturated that it's so hard to find anything quality.
But it's easy to fall into those bad places, though, like we see. It's very tempting to. We say it all the time. We could have a much more popular show. We could make a ton of money on this show, and if we just change up what we talk about, if we use deceptive practices, if we rage bait the crap out of people, right? We could do this for a living and make a decent living. But I refuse to do that, and so do you. So, although that may not be the point of it, that is what happens. That's what happens because, again, let me share an axiom with you that touches the nerve center of this topic. If the ills of the world consume you, eventually they will destroy you. We're on the second half of that axiom when we look out into the world, right? We have so much information. We have so much information that has been turned against us, and then we turn against each other, that we are seeing destruction. Now, the news isn't the only reason for that, obviously. There's bad people too. But don't get it messed up, man. You know, the intent might have been noble, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Because there will always be those who will take advantage of these things, right?
Yeah. I mean,
And
how
it is
many
one of the
messed up
hardest.
leaders and
What's
people
that?
out there, how many messed up leaders or people out there through history did things without feeling like they were doing the right thing?
Well, everybody thinks they're doing the right thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But don't get it messed up either, because many of those who did really bad things lied to themselves enough times to get to that place.
Yeah.
There was one thing I taught you. If you ever have to justify your words or actions, then they weren't right in the first place. Say things and do things that require no justification, right? Yeah, that's really, someone might say that's really hard to do, but that is the thing. Be impeccable. Be impeccable, right? That's just what it is. And if you do and think and act in a way that doesn't require your justification, then you're on the right path. You're doing the right thing. Now, this has nothing to do with whether it's legal or illegal or moral or immoral. I'm not getting into those arguments because we could argue that stuff forever, right? Yep. But if your authentic self says and does things that require no justification, then you're probably doing the right thing.
The one thing though is too with this is it's not even necessarily not needing justification when it comes to people asking you why are you doing what you're doing, but it's making sure that your words and your actions are aligned.
Yes.
Making sure that the values you present are the values you uphold. The issue with so much of politics nowadays, like I think anyone who's in politics, it takes a certain type of person to be able to climb that ladder, and unfortunately the qualifications are not good. But it's all about
there are none. You just got to be popular. That's it.
Well, popular and I think to a degree corrupt. I mean, it's just like.
Well, look. I don't know. I think a lot of people would agree, and I won't speak about world politics because I don't know anything about politics outside of the United States. But I think I could say with confidence that there were many first-term senators, congressmen, congresswomen who went in there really, really ready to take it on and change things. But that place is like a freaking meat grinder. You go in one way, you come out another. And I think there is a handful of people that have ever survived that process, right? It just chews people up. It just chews them up. And this isn't about left and right, because those are just wings of the same damn bird. Yep. I don't know. I don't know what the exact quote is, but we'll quote we'll give credit here to the great Obi-Wan Kenobi, who said, "Don't trust a politician." Right? Never. And I don't. Right? But look, this is why this is hard. This is why this axiom applies so well to this topic today, because it is one of the hardest things for those of us who consider ourselves light workers or light bringers, right? Knights or otherwise, whatever word you describe your path, a path that generally is selfless and about service and all these things that we talk about and these things that we demonstrate, Michael. Because like especially, well, I won't say especially you, but you and others, when we've come to this path, we want to save the world. We have this drive in us to save the world. I want to serve. I want to save. I want to make the world a better place. I want to dispel the world of darkness, which of course we know is not the right way to go. But this is one of the most detrimental pitfalls to this path and to paths that are similar, because the reality of the world overwhelms our understanding that we can't solve all the world's problems.
Nor can we see all the variables.
Nor can we even see them. Right, exactly. And I'll give you a couple easy examples. Extreme poverty, right? That exists in the world. People are suffering without food, without water, and this happens everywhere. And we want to change that. We want to save that. War, cruelty, just these gross injustices on the global scale, they weigh heavy on us because when we try to tackle these things from the viewpoint that we're gonna dispel darkness, well, you have to dispel human nature. You have to dispel the nature of the universe. So the ills of the world do consume us, and they do destroy us. And the news, and not just the news, let's not just pick on the news, let's pick on all sources of information,
Yeah,
right?
sources.
Right, all sources of information. They grab that nerve and they twist it because we're already kind of oriented this way to want to save and want to make the world peaceful and all this stuff. So, but they twist us in a way that makes us that it creates more despair on and weight upon us, right? That's why this stuff is hard. That's why we have trouble being informed without being crazy about it, right? Without getting just completely overwhelmed. So that's really what we have to understand here, because we can't remove.
No. Well, so there's this term I've been hearing about, and I love the concept because it's what so many of these systems are playing to, and it's suicidal empathy. It is where we have these algorithms that realize that something emotionally sparked us, and it takes us down these rabbit holes. And as it does, our vision narrows and narrows, and we feel the injustice of the things we're seeing, the things we're hearing.
Right.
We resonate with it. We slowly start pushing any other information that could contradict this thought pattern to the point that we believe it as reality and therefore embody the injustice that is being done elsewhere.
Right.
And we don't think about necessarily what the repercussions are of what to do about it. We don't think about what all the different variables that led to this event. Instead, we try to look for the reasons it is unjust. We try to look for the reasons that it is, why it is corrupt.
Yeah.
And we will hold on to it without taking in any other information.
Well, also what it is, and we talk about this on this show many different episodes, and they're probably weaved into every episode in some way or the other. But really what this is this inner reactivity to everything, just projected out onto a global scale, but not just from one of us, from all of us, right? So you have this kind of unhealed knee-jerk thing, but just on a global scale that actually manifests into reality, right? So the title of your show today was How to Be Informed Without Being Possessed. What would you say the difference is between those two? Between being informed and being possessed? What do you mean by that?
So, what I mean by being informed over being possessed by the news is where you allow yourself to engage with content, do your due diligence on the things that matter to you as far as learning about them, staying up to date with what's going on in the world, what's going on in your country, what's going on in the state level and locally. Which I think those last two are the most important because they're the only ones we have any type of control over. Being possessed is where you're constantly digging into the information, trying to learn more. And I'm guilty of this. I've done it. I know a lot of people that have, and it ends up becoming their personality. And
Right.
that's where it really starts becoming dangerous. And even before that, like that's the extreme side of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets to unhealthy territory. The more you fall into, I think the best way to look at it is, are you a part of a group? And that doesn't mean you go to rallies and you go and you get in, you're a big part of this belief system. It's how much are you willing to take in information and also take in contradictory information
Right.
on what you're looking at. Like, I think that's the healthier side of being able to be informed without being possessed by your opinions. Allowing yourself to have divergence there where you can separate your own emotional self from what you're taking in. And that's hard when those algorithms get a hold of you.
It sounds a lot like obsession too. Is there much of a difference between obsession and possession?
No.
Yeah.
Because that is when you start getting to the bad territories where you're constantly trying to intake this information. You start circling around and trying to stay up to date every day, trying to, again, I'm guilty of it. I've had it happen plenty of times, and I got to catch myself. I got to detach from it, because so often when I'm down in that pool and I'm seeing all these horrible threads going on, the minute I step away and I start getting that distance, 6 months go by, and all of a sudden, none of that really had any impact on my life.
What would you say to those who would then say, well, then you don't care, Michael? How dare you step away from this very important thing that we all are really mad about? And the fact that you step away from it for your own peace, you must agree with it then, right? What do you say to that?
No, I've had that conversation with people I deeply care about when I get into that state, and it's like, look where you're at. Like it's at a point where you are stressing every day,
right.
Doom and gloom. This is having a major impact on your life.
And that's exactly right, because most people don't realize when they've crossed that line from being informed to being influenced, right? And then from being influenced to being possessed. And then from being possessed to just this obsession where they have the things on the wall with the strings attaching all these different things, right?
Exactly what I was picturing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I picture too. This doesn't happen all at once. It's a little, and you know what? Every time I say this like this, it's like I think, man, I say this a lot. Like everything happens in steps and gradually. Well, that's just the truth of the universe, right? All the good stuff, all the bad stuff is an unfolding. And nothing just happens all at once, right? So most of us don't realize when we've crossed those lines. As you said, when you said you've had those conversations, you're like, well, yeah, but look where you're at. And they don't even realize it, right? Because it doesn't happen all at once. It's an unfolding. It's step by step, through repetition, through a little exposure here, a little exposure there. And then, as you said, the algorithms, they find that part of you that is really vulnerable, right, to this kind of thing, and then you just get blasted on all sides. But this creates this quiet conditioning, and it steals away your attention. It takes control of your emotions. It really starts to replace things in your life with just this, right? Back in the day, we'd call it drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Drinking the Kool-Aid.
No, I think there's some good mile markers you can look at to sort of gauge where you're at.
Yeah.
You know, how often are you compulsively checking the news to see what's happening next?
Yeah.
How often do you feel that urgency?
Right.
You know, ask yourself, how often is my mood fluctuating with headlines? Like, don't get me wrong, we've had a lot of crazy stuff happen the last couple months. And all of those deserve a level of recognition as far as raising the emotions. But how often is it happening? How engaged are you with this content?
Well, and a lot of the content is just repeated. They just change the way they, you know. But what's interesting is, and I'm going to pick on the easy ones, right? Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and I don't know if there are any more big ones. I haven't watched the news in so long. I haven't watched it literally in probably 8 or 10 years, right? Because I started to see myself getting pulled away from the things in my life and the people I love, and almost being like forced to, or felt like I was being forced to pick this thing or them. And I will pick them every time. I don't care what they believe. I will pick them every time, right? Over someone's opinion. But you nailed it, because there is a difference here. Being informed is an intentional, conscious decision. It's a choice, right? You choose what you engage in. And then when you engage in it, like you said, and even to the point of how deeply you allow it to affect you. Because like you said, if it starts getting to where it doesn't feel right, or I'm falling out of alignment with what's real in the world, then I have to now choose to back that off, right? And try to come back to what's actually really happening. Now, I'm not saying nothing in the news isn't actually happening, Michael, but a little bit of truth, a whole lot of bullshit. That's how they sell it. It's how they sell it.
Well, let's face it, us as human beings, the species on this planet, we are not designed to handle the information of all the happenings going on all around the world. That is not something our nervous system is wired for.
Right.
Again, that's why I say it's good to stay at the local level, at the community level, you know, your state. And even then, most people don't even care about that. Most people aren't even looking at that.
Which, ironically, that's the best place. That you should be more worried about local than you should national or global, because local is where it affects you. And that's just politically speaking, right? Like, we worry about the tax rates of the country, but meanwhile, our city, county, and state are taxing the crap out of us, and we don't even realize it, right? Just as an example. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the best way to just phrase this is this possession that happens, it isn't dramatic. It isn't like something does possess you. It's very subtle in the way it starts to take over your life. And it's when the outside world dictates your internal state is when you know that you're probably too far into this information realm.
Right. You feel compelled to engage because you start to identify with what's happening. Back to the axiom, right? If the ills of the world consume you, eventually they will destroy you. In other words, if you keep identifying with the things that are happening, which those aren't you, by the way, right? You will become those things. And then your mood, we talked about this in the last show about emotional states, right? And then what'll happen is your mood will start to fluctuate with the headlines, which means what, Michael? That means the people giving me the headlines can start pulling my strings and just tell me exactly what to do. Being possessed, it's not like a demon's in you or something, but you're literally being controlled by a 2-line headline. How many times have we done shows and I share the show and someone looks at the headline and then freaks out on me? Didn't listen to the show, didn't even read the show description or any of the other information. Headline, freak out.
And it happens a lot.
It happens to me sometimes, right? Because
one thing I can't stand. I remember when I learned the term clickbait. I didn't know that was a thing. And so often I'd watch videos that irritate me because they have an image that's important or they'd have a headline where I'm like, oh, I want to know about this. And then you get to the end of the video, I'm like, I didn't see that in the video. I didn't
never talked about it at all. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, what the hell?
It got really bad back in the day. Back in the day, YouTube they started developing ways to keep those videos from getting too popular. But you still see clickbait. You see it in the images. You see it everywhere.
Oh, and just wait till your algorithm picks up on what pulls those strings, because you'll get tons of things that are just clickbait.
But we went from clickbait to rage bait.
Yeah.
I'll give you one that I see a lot. Karen gets instant karma, or cop loses his job over such and such. And then when you watch the video, it's like the cop never lost his job. The cop never actually said anything wrong. It was just some normal everyday thing. And it's like, you bastards. You bastards, right? But and like you said, it's not dramatic. But they are, if you let them do this, they are pulling your strings, man. They are going to pull your strings. They're going to puppet you along and make you hate everyone that they don't want you to like, or that they don't want you to. And this is not about agree or disagree, right? Yeah. If you've been listening to the show long enough, you know that paradoxes exist. I promise you that person A and person B can have different opinions and still exist. And the world will not explode. I promise you, it happens all the time. They just don't want you to believe that, right?
And I think one other important side note, just depending on the type of news consumer you are, because I imagine if you're listening to this, you're in this place, is it's not even just the puppeteers that are pulling strings. There's someone who is constantly looking for the truth and for the information. Because I know a couple of those. They don't follow any direct feed. They go and they try to outsource everything, try to find all the angles, try to look at all the corruption going on.
Right.
That is equally as destructive.
It can be if you become obsessive about it. Yeah. So our path is about sovereignty, inner authority over ourselves, right? Becoming the anchor so that we can't be tugged and pulled and taken for a ride. So from the perspective of our path, when we allow ourselves to become obsessive or possessed or lose that inner authority, that's when it's time to stand away from it, because somebody else is now directing your path instead of you directing your path.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind is like the first big spiritual lesson I ever had in life. Not that I took it as that in the moment, but it was a big impact on me. Is the serenity prayer. Grant me the courage to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Mm-hmm. Discernment is a superpower.
Yeah.
It is. You know, they say common sense isn't so common anymore, and really what they're saying is people don't know how to be discerning. We don't know when the wool's being pulled over our eyes.
Exactly.
But you know what? How can you? You're literally getting information being shot at you from literally all sides. From the land, from the sea, and from space, right? Just being totally bombarded all the time.
How much of it is based on fact and how much of it is someone's opinion being bolstered and amplified? You know,
well, when I said earlier, it's a little bit of truth and a lot of bullshit. Well, the bullshit part is their opinions.
Yeah.
Like this thing did happen, right? This thing did happen. But let me tell you how I feel about it. And you better believe me, and you better listen to me, and you better agree with me, or else you're the bad guy, or you're the other thing, right?
Yeah.
And I don't care what side of the political spectrum they're on, they all do it. And it annoys me to death.
Yeah. It's like the one thing I do listen to weekly, the Tom Bilyeu Show. It's all about cause and effect, and it tries to take the emotions out of it. And I love that because it's just like, here's what's going on. Here's what caused it. Here's the effects it's having. Here's the different things going on in Parliament that's also happening. It's a good way to have a non-biased visual of what's going on.
Yeah.
But
that's what the news used to be. That's what it used to be when I was a kid.
Yeah, and that's how it needs to be, because all we're doing again is the rage bait. We're trying to get views. We're trying to get clicks. We're trying to get people to rally to a cause, and we're removing anything that could be contradictory. It's those echo chambers, right?
Well, and yeah, exactly. And this is why we weren't just going to pick on the news, because when people stopped watching the news, and a lot of people did stop watching the news, well, the news just came over to the YouTube and TikTok and Facebook, and then they became the bigger channels again. So you just can't get away from it no matter where you go. So you have to really be discerning. It's very, very important.
And
why does it?
There is a trend here. There is a pattern on why it's so addictive. You know, it goes through 4 stages. You know, the uncertainty creates anxiety. The minute we know something's going on, we worry about it. We start getting anxious. So that anxiety drives us to go and seek information. We start diving into it, and that seeking gives us a temporary relief. We feel like we've gotten more information. We can soothe our nervous system. Then we get another headline, which then starts the pattern all over again. And it's just this cycle going over and over, ingraining neural pathways, creating addictive patterns.
We never get a chance to breathe, right?
Yeah.
How can you pause when that's happening? How can you take a moment, right?
Yeah.
Like
you were asking me as a genuine question, or
no, it was a rhetorical question, because like, how can you, right?
You can't.
Unless you unplug. That's the only way to unplug, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because this has nothing to do with discipline or willpower. There's a very, very smart pattern at work here. And it may not be our pattern at first, but they worm their way in. And those 4 things that you said, they worm their way in, and we never get a break from it. Like you said, it starts with uncertainty. The world is complex. It's always been complex. It's always been unpredictable, which is why we're wired the way we are, right? We have to have a defense mechanism to deal with that. And most of the time, outside of our direct control. I can't do anything about what's happening in the world, right? And Michael, does the mind enjoy uncertainty? Does it?
No, it wants to bridge any gap it has.
It wants to,
it wants anything it can to complete the picture it wants to create.
It wants to stabilize everything, whether it's real or not, to make you chill out. But are you really chilling out? No. You just like even when you get to a point where you feel chill, there's like this low level of anxiety that's just constantly going in the background, right? And that anxiety keeps us open for new anxiety and new stuff to stress us out and freak us out, right? As you said. And then the mind goes, oh crap, let's try this again. And then the mind will start to look for clarity or for answers. And when it doesn't find any real tangible evidence or stuff to actually regulate us again, then it does what? It just creates crap. It just goes, okay, I don't know what to do, but let's just Here. Just tell him this. Just tell him this story. That way he'll start to at
Here's
least.
the narrative.
Here's the narrative, right? And yeah, that works kinda for a minute. It's not. It's not so much that process that happens within us. It only becomes really bad when it just does that over and over and over and over and over again, right? Little by little, right?
Yeah.
Because
That's why it's
sometimes we
important
need
to be
these.
mindful.
It is important to be mindful, but this is why, it does bring us a temporary sense of relief, which is good because we can't always be stressed out. It's when we allow it to do that over and over and over and over again. Something we talk about a lot, creating these bad habits, right? And your nervous system may seem to settle, but even if it is, it's only doing it for a moment. Because like you said, then the next thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. Yeah. And this is how they get us too. Like when I said earlier, they just saying the same thing. But now, once you finally figured out how to chill out from that headline, right? What they do is they'll take the same thing again, but then hit it with a different angle, or create some new uncertainty around it, or here's the newest concern from this thing that so and so did or whatever, and then it does what? It just kickstarts that cycle again, and it just destroys us.
When it's like the things they use that help it maintain this addictive ability is, often they will start using emotional language, things that start pulling on your strings. They are very intentional in what they try to use for those triggers. They try to do conflict framing where they take one person said one thing out of place, and we're going to go ahead and build an entire case about what's going on here off of one sentence. But they know that one sentence is enough to trigger millions of people.
Right. Yeah, because they're trying to rage bait us. They're trying to get that reaction, and they'll present situations in a way that emphasize division. But hurry! It's very urgent. It's an emergency, and then they'll threaten the crap out of you, right? And the algorithms, they just amplify this stuff. And it's not that the algorithms are it's not the algorithm itself is evil per se. The algorithm is just what? It's just promoting the most engaging content, which is most often the most emotionally charged stuff, right?
And that's why they keep respinning it.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to look at, like, what does this do to your nervous system? Our survival instincts are wired to detect threat. That is
You ever seen anybody take a plate of glass and just hit it with a friggin' hammer? That's what it does. I mean, it's all Humpty Dumpty, dude. Go ahead and try to put it back together. Find all the pieces.
Yeah. Well, and we can even get addicted to that stimulation. When you get so used to chaos, you don't feel normal without it.
Right.
And so you start diving into this stuff just to get that little fix.
Well, I mean, if you visited a war zone, then visited a monastery, those people are going to be very different. I'm not talking crap about the monks because, I'm not. But they're not facing war.
Yeah, they're wired different.
Well, they're going to be wired different over time. And this is why we have to learn to regulate, to find center, to how did I used to put this? To be able to meditate at a heavy metal concert. That's basically what we got to learn to do. We got to learn to find center.
That's a good analogy for it.
Right? So you have to learn to find center in the middle of chaos, because chaos will always be a thing, right? It's why we talk about becoming the anchor. Storms will always come and go, but we can become an anchor so that they don't affect us, in that way. They're going to affect us in some way, right? But we can always be the anchor.
Again, sovereignty. The more we can gain composure, the more we can allow ourselves to not be affected by things outside of ourselves, the more we will be in our power. Because that's what we do when we get engaged. These news cycles, they're constantly triggering anxiety, anger, even numbness when it comes to things. And that is releasing sovereignty and giving your power to something else.
Yeah. So how good is the nervous system at telling the difference between real or perceived threats and things?
Oh, it does not know the difference. That's a good question, because that is right on point with this. I mean, again, our systems are wired to detect threat. We are not wired for global events. We are just not able to handle all that without it turning on our nervous system, putting us into hypervigilance, and wreaking havoc on our systems.
Well, it hasn't been. I mean, in the when you look at the timeline of humanity, a very small portion of it was us moving around, right? Like, we were wired to survive and to try to flourish wherever we were. Wherever you were born, that's where you were, right? And that's just. But when we start moving around, because we're wired to detect threat. That's it. We're wired to detect threats. And long before modern life, whatever you want to consider modern life, this system helped us respond to real immediate danger. We're constantly scanning, right? We're constantly looking for signals that something might be a little different in the environment. But because the nervous system doesn't clearly distinguish between an actual direct threat or something that is imagined, it becomes a problem. Especially when we're repeatedly consuming content that emphasizes urgency, danger, conflict. How do you expect your body to even find a baseline anymore? And that's what we're seeing, right? You're right. It does piss us off. It makes us angry because, everything becomes unjust and everything starts to violate our values. And because we do whatever we set out to do, right? It mobilizes itself to protect that. Michael says this is unjust. Let's freak out, right? The problem is that there are a lot of injustice. There's a lot of horrible stuff happening that starts to get overshadowed by things that aren't actually happening. So instead of actually tackling the actual injustices and all these things that are happening literally right outside your door, you get spun off into this rabbit hole about things that are barely even true.
Yeah.
That's the part that frustrates me. Because I'm like, yeah, but wait a minute. Wait a minute, this is actually happening right here. Look. Like, look over here, right? And it's like, no. This over here. This is the thing that I'm mad about. And it drives me crazy. That's what drives me crazy. Is when the ills of the world are possessing other people. That's what stresses me out. Because it's like, we got stuff here. Come over here. Let's do something about this.
Let's address what we can, not what we can't.
Well, it just doesn't make any sense. Because when people get obsessed and possessed by this thing, they start losing common sense. They do. Because then they just focus their hate and angst on whatever this person tells them to, right? And it doesn't make any sense to me. Well, I mean, it does make sense to me. I understand it. I just wish that more of us were like, oh, hold on. You don't tell me what to do. You don't tell me shit. I'm going to do what I want to do, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. But there's going to be people out there right now I know it's going to be saying, oh, you guys just don't care. You guys just don't care about what's happening in the world. No, I care about what's actually happening, not this shit that you made up in your head. That's what I actually care about, right? I actually care about the guy that I can help feed, who's literally right in front of me, right? Yeah. Does it hurt me that there's lots of people in the world suffering? Yes. But where is my energy best used, Michael? Worrying to death about that or helping the dude up in front of me?
Yeah.
If we all just turned our heads to the people in front of us, this stuff would disappear on a global scale. But we're too damn distracted and too busy worrying about shit that we can't even have anything to do with. It's just wasted energy, right? And I know I went on a tangent. I told you you're gonna drag me down this damn rabbit hole, and
we ain't out of it yet either.
I know. I know. Throw me a rope. It's gonna get deeper here.
Segues perfectly into the next big area of conversation, which is the illusion of control, right?
Yeah.
We often consume the news because we think it gives us more control. If I understand enough, I'll feel safe.
Right. Yeah. There's another axiom one of my favorite axioms that talk about control. and how crazy it is to think that you can control anything outside of yourself. It's crazy. It's actually crazy to think that. The axiom is, if you think to take over the universe, do not. It is impossible. Everything in existence is sacred. Seeking to control all things is to lose one's grasp on reality. There is great folly in trying to control all things, because that's a path away from wisdom and diving headfirst into the deep pool of illusion, right?
Yeah.
You're going to start to entertain this marvelous illusion, this grand thing that will just simply blind you to reality, to the profound beauty and sacredness of existence in its raw form, good and bad, light and dark, right? You start to lose touch with the humility that comes from recognizing that the cosmos are impossibly vast. You're never going to see the end of it, right? Ever. So you're gonna tell me that you're gonna try to control everything?
Well, again, I think it's like, again, trying to understand everything. Like thinking if you do enough research, you'll see all the aspects. There is no way you can gain all the understanding of all the variables going on to truly have an accurate picture of what's really going on.
What you just said is a perfect definition of going from informed to possessed. Because yes, we do start, all of these things are started with good intentions. All of them. But you know the rest of that saying. If we're not careful, if we don't embrace the wisdom of surrender and acceptance and understand that there are forces and mysteries in this universe and to human that transcend our comprehension, right? Then you are going down a path to where you may lose your grip on reality, right? It's funny because it, in the book I wrote, the Axiom book I wrote, the first one, I actually used the prayer that you talk about. I put that in there for this very topic, for this very axiom, right? Oh God and Heavenly Father, grant us a serenity of mind to accept that which cannot be changed, courage to change that which can be changed, and the wisdom to know one from the other. Right? Yeah. That serenity prayer is literally made for this understanding. Seek knowledge, yes, but don't get obsessed with going from seeking to controlling, because you cannot. I do not care what you say. I don't care who you are. You cannot. You're going to cross a threshold and you're going to lose your grip on reality if you're not careful.
Yeah. Information.
And all these things, other things we're talking about today.
Say what?
No, I was just saying, and all these things we're talking about today around this part of the conversation just seeks to feed that illusion that we can control.
Yeah. Information without agency often increases helplessness, which is what so many people are feeling nowadays. You see it in the world. And numbers of anxiety have skyrocketed, depression, all these different factors playing in, but this is definitely one of the biggest ones. There is a difference between staying informed and trying to control the uncontrollable, which is what so many people think they're doing when they're dedicating themselves to digesting this content and pursuing these causes. You know, the first episode we ever did was championing a cause.
Yep.
And knowing what that entails.
Right. That plays right into this too. That is a very good subtopic to this, right? They're all connected. But what good is insight without integration, right? We did a show about that. The reason that the Serenity Prayer and all of its kind of different versions, right? It's powerful because we're literally trying to find wisdom and knowledge and to understand. But we also need to understand the difference between the circumstances that can be controlled or changed and the ones that cannot be. And then trying to find courage to take action on the things that we can, right? Yeah. And then asking for serenity and peace for the things that we can't. So if you don't want to fall into this trap, we really have to focus our efforts on not control, but on trying to be good stewards, right? and work in cooperation with the natural order of things. All these systems that we're talking about today, Michael, seek to pull us away from the natural order of things. If you want to help contribute positively to the world, and you want to protect and nurture the environment and promote love and compassion and understanding among these things, do them in your sphere of influence. I promise you there are people right in front of you that need that. And if you help them, then you can move on to the next people. But it's pointless to work outside of where we have influence and control. Some control, right? So...
And it'll be so much more fulfilling when you do that.
Well, it'll actually do something.
Yeah.
It'll actually do something. You know, and look, I've been teaching this path for a long time. And one of the things that is the hardest thing for people to accept and surrender to is that they cannot save the whole world. But they can save the world for one person. And that's really hard to come to terms with, Michael. It was very hard for me when I first started. Because I was ready. I was ready to roll up my sleeves and Superman this thing, dude. But I wasn't getting anywhere.
Many people are. So many people are.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Look, I love the energy, right? I love that you want to save the world. But it's not about saving the world. It's about saving how do I want to put this? It's not about saving the world. It's about saving the world for one purpose, or one person, I should say. One person at a time. You know, you'll multiply that. Yes.
Let the
Go ahead.
ripple you make be what makes the impact on the world, not you
Yes.
as the stone being cast.
Right. Right. So, you know, this topic is very hard to talk about without getting pulled into, you know, into one direction or the other. I understand that. But I refuse. People criticize me for never giving my opinions about things, especially politics. I refuse to give my sovereignty over to someone else, period. Period. What's the worst they could do? Kill me? If I don't agree? Okay, whatever. I'm not dead. You can kill my body. I'm not dead. And you better hope I don't become a ghost. I'll be knocking books off your shelves and stuff, you know? Be freaking you out. But look, I'm just... People lose their sovereignty in such a deceptive way, and they don't see it. And this is one way they do it. Never, ever, 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 ever outsource your life to someone else. Ever. You were given us human soul to take care of, and you better take care of it and not give that job to someone else, because they are going to misuse that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well said. So we've dove into a lot of what this being possessed looks like, how it is, but let's talk about some preventative measures we can take to start creating boundaries for ourselves, being conscious about our consumption. You know, one of the big ones we touched on, which is big for me, is, you know, set intake windows. Choose when you engage. Don't let it choose you. I have notifications off on anything that has news. I do not let it send me notifications to my phone.
Right. Weren't you using an app at one time, too, that kind of helped you turn things off for yourself?
Yeah, no, iPhones, they got the screen time. I only allow so much time to certain apps.
Right, right. One thing, and this is probably the hardest thing to do, this hardest boundary to erect and to protect and maintain, but try to avoid jumping between these just crazy things over and over and over again. Try to just stick to one and try to let that settle in and reflect on that and until you're ready to move on. When you just jump from thing to thing to thing, it will fracture you really badly.
And real quickly. And
yes.
I think just to elaborate on this, again, algorithms know how to play the game of keeping your attention. Don't let the algorithms take control. You know, digest something, put it away for a bit, let it sit.
Right.
Don't allow yourself to be carried further down the rabbit hole, because often it'll be like, the charged thing from this impacted him. We're going to give him something even more emotionally charged. And it'll just be more and more junk you're being fed.
Yeah, so another one is something that I do. I just been doing it for a long time. How'd you put it? Kind of doing that check-in, that emotional check-in, that mental check-in after you read something or hear something or see a video, right? You sit with that, right? And this is something I'll do. So whenever I see a video And it kind of goes. I kind of go, wait a minute, that's gonna piss me off. And then I'll actually stop. I'll go and I'll start researching the truth of that thing and seeing if it's even true before I allow myself to get mad or whatever. I'm like, I better make sure this is true. So once I observe that spark trying to be lit, I'll pause and I'll start going. I'll start digging and researching. I mean, dude, sometimes I'll spend 20 minutes on a 3-minute video just to make sure, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's a training thing. I'm training myself to always pause and to make sure that it is true before I react or respond.
Yeah. You know, one thing I like to do, as much as this does kind of pull you more in the rabbit hole, is like if I hear something, especially if it's emotionally charged, I allow myself to not be like, yeah, that's not right. I'm like, let me check the facts on this. And I'll do a little digging. I'll look at the thing,
fact checking. Yep.
Yeah, it's like, all right, before
That's exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I was thinking that's what you were saying.
Yeah. It's basically a BS detector. Like even if I have a bias against a certain thing or a certain person or like a certain celebrity or whatever the thing is, right? If I kind of have this, whatever it is, even if I don't like the thing or like the person, I'll say, hold on, bullshit, right?
Yeah.
I'll say, you know what, that doesn't sound right. And then I'll do, like you said, I'll spend 20 or 30 minutes fact checking something before I allow myself to. And if I find out it's true, then I'm like, yeah, the hell with you, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I'll choose that response to be mad or be sad or whatever. But because these AI videos are getting too good now, man. Like, you know, I don't even know how. And this is going to be the only political thing I say today, Michael. I don't know how into the future, the next 1, 2, 3, 5 elections from now, I don't even know how we're even going to get through those anymore.
I don't either.
Right? I've seen so many videos about both candidates this last time. And a lot of them were AI videos. And some of them were like really obvious. And I'm like, bull crap, she never said that. She never did that or whatever. Or come on, they're just making this up about this guy or whatever. And then when I look into it, of course, it's fake. But people don't do that. They don't take the time to separate that fact from whatever is being framed, right?
That validates their opinions.
Yes. If you believe something strongly enough, Michael, you will create evidence for it everywhere you go.
That's why it's like the best you can be is non-biased. Like, I love being a fence sitter because it's just like, all right, what's true, what's false, what really is the benefit to either of these strategies?
I wouldn't call you a fence sitter though, because I think people who don't make choices are still making a choice. They're just kind of taking the easy way out. What you're doing is
maybe that's not the right.
What you're doing is like, okay, give it to me. Okay, give it to me, and then you're weighing them.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at them, you're observing, you're checking, and then you're finding what's true.
Yeah, discernment.
Right? And then discernment, the magic superpower discernment. And then you're making your choice. I don't have if you looked at my history of how I've voted or how I've had my feelings on different topics throughout the years, I'm all over the place, dude. Because I looked for the truth, I looked for the facts, I looked for these things. It takes me a long time to vote. And that's how I taught my kids how to vote too, though. You know, we sit down with a ballot and we sit down with whatever information we can find. And if we can't find information about a particular candidate or issue, then we'll spend an hour going through it and trying to weigh these things and make the best decision we can. If everybody did that, it would take us forever to vote, but that's okay. I'd rather us take our time instead of just being reactive.
You know, one thing you can do to help ground yourself when you're getting lost in these things too is like, after you're done, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Is this triggering a bunch within me? Is this something I can act on? You know, if this is something you're feeling pulled to do something and there's nothing you can do, consider limiting exposure to that topic.
Right.
Because that's, I think, where a lot of people get stuck, as they start chasing ways they can do something to change something, and there's nothing in their power.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying don't go speak your mind, don't go protest, don't go do any of that stuff. I'm a huge advocate that we need to have freedom of speech and stand our ground on what's important to us.
But you should do the things that align with actual truth, though, right?
Yeah.
Right. It goes back to the axiom about champion causes, right?
You know, and again, I'm all about that digital detox and knowing when you're too far in. If you notice, there's a pattern of how often you're doom scrolling, how often
Right.
you're jumping into the media. You know, start finding when those consistent things are happening and replace it with
Mhm.
something. Go on a walk, call a friend, you know, read a book or watch a show. Do something that is contrary to what you're normally doing. The best way to break habits is to install new ones. Now, I'm not going to tell you to choose something healthy to replace it with because this is already something unhealthy. Just find something that is less damaging to your nervous system to fill in that void. And again,
Yeah.
I'm not telling you to not be informed. I'm just telling you to help create space in your life where it's not consuming you.
Right. That's good advice.
And there are ways we can stay curious without being reactive, you know? Again, separate fact from framing. Look at the things being presented like we were talking about. Fact check them. Allow things to not just add to your reasons your opinions are valid, and actually question what's being presented to you. You know,
Yeah.
another important thing that I think everyone could learn from is take time for yourself to decompress after something really emotionally triggers you, and don't
Yeah.
just trauma dump on people the emotionally charged stories of what you just learned.
Or sharing 500 things at once on Facebook.
Yeah. God.
Yeah.
Be comfortable saying, I don't know enough yet.
Right. Yeah, I do it all the time, don't I?
Yep.
You know.
The master
Which,
of non-opinion.
but here's the thing, you know. Somebody who teaches, there's kind of this fear that if you don't know something, people will depart from you. So what do a lot of teachers do? Or teachers or masters or gurus do? They'll just start making shit up. And it's like because they don't want to lose that. But if that's the reason be careful how I say this. If the only reason you're teaching is to gain followers or to gain prestige or something, then you should not be teaching anything. So when you ask me, Michael, about this, I'm like, you know what? I never actually even thought about that. I don't know. But I'm sure we could figure it out, right? Let's go figure it out.
And I value that so much because it's not like you're trying to preach to me or always have the answers. It's
Right.
a genuine conversation in those moments.
Well, but it's also genuine humanity, genuine vulnerability.
That's what yeah.
Right. Because student and teacher, even if there's many students in one teacher, there is a relationship there that must be honored. It must be respected. And if you're not allowing each or the other to be human, then there's not a good relationship. If I can't be vulnerable to my students, then how could there ever be any real trust there? And the same goes for the other side. If my students can't be vulnerable with me, how can they ever trust me? Because really my only goal is to impart knowledge and help you build wisdom, right?
Well, it's impossible to go past that top level of master, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because from master you go to student.
You go back to students. That's right. You go back to
And you
student.
can't do that if you think you know everything.
Well, yeah. And the other thing is too, if I tell a student I don't know, I actually don't know that. And if they leave, well then I was not a good teacher for them. And they were not going to be a good student for me, right? Because there must be that relationship. But I understand why people will always try to create a reason. Because they're afraid. They're afraid. Look, I offer my time. If that resonates and aligns with people, then good, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. That is okay too. Another one is becoming comfortable with uncertainty, right? That's kind of what we're talking about here, right? The unknown, uncertain. But what this does also, when you learn to do this, it keeps you from forming those rigid conclusions based on little bit of truth and a whole lot of BS, right?
Yeah.
It keeps us open. That's the point. It keeps us open instead of just reactive all the time.
You know,
How important is
prioritize
it to?
long form.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you how important it is to stop headline jumping and just dive into a long form conversation like this one,
Yeah.
or dive into
Exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
Because that is one of the worst things, is how people get most of their news from TikTok and stuff like that. Is those are people who are definitely trying to get more views than help people stay informed. Or they're people who are trying to force their opinions without trying to deliver honest conversations. Long-form content allows you to see the deeper details. It allows you to see more of what's being presented instead of letting emotional flares take the front seat.
Yeah.
You know, it's seeking dialogue over comment sections.
Yes. Right. Because comment sections are just a bunch of opinions most of the time, especially when something that's really, really charged, emotionally charged. There are good forum boards. There are good Facebook pages out there that just have good dialogue. But if there's a headline and it involves a celebrity and it involves an immoral act, you better believe those comments are not going to be worth anything.
Yeah.
But curiosity, I always say, Michael, curiosity over judgment. Curiosity expands our consciousness. It grows our vessel, creates that space for us to be open and to learn understanding, right? And acceptance. Of course, judgmental attitudes and reactivity just shrinks it down, as you like to say.
Completely. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up the episode?
Oh, I've got so many, but I'll stick to just a few. Because I mean, we could talk about this all day.
Oh yeah, no, we could do a series on this.
Right. The goal is we're not telling you to disconnect from the world. What we're inviting you to do is remain connected without losing yourself. Wouldn't you say that's kind of the gist of it? You're not meant to carry every single headline or react to everything you see. And I promise you, not everything that you're told is urgent is. Most of it's not. But when your attention is constantly being pulled away from you and outside of you, we lose stability in here, right? We get weak in the knees, as they say. And as we talked about in the last episode, when your emotions are driven by external output, the highs and lows, you have no authority anymore over yourself. You have none. But when you begin to choose how you engage, when you engage, what you engage in, how you reflect upon the things that are coming to you, everything shifts, doesn't it? Because you can stay informed and still be grounded. You can understand what is happening without being consumed. And yes, those of us who don't react, we do still care. You can still care and not react at the same time. So my call to action this week would be to choose one boundary. Choose one of those 4 or 5 boundaries that Michael shared with us and stick to it. You could be limiting when you check the news, right? Set yourself some screen time. Pause before sharing or reacting to something emotional. Or another one of your suggestions, notice how your body responds when you're consuming different things. You know, of course, as we always say, don't try to change everything at once. But you can train your relationship with information. And you can decide how to allow it to inform you or possess you.
Beautiful. For affirmations today, I can stay informed without surrendering my peace. I choose clarity over urgency. I do not need to react to everything I see. My nervous system deserves protection. And awareness does not require agitation. For our journaling prompt, reflect on your relationship with news and information. When do you consume most often? What emotion usually drives you to check? And what emotion do you usually feel afterwards? And then ask yourself, what would a conscious relationship with information look like instead? Our exercise, real simple this week. 24-hour reset. Disable non-essential notifications. Choose one intentional time to check the news. Avoid commentary threads. Notice how your body feels after that 24 hours. You know, at the end of the day, reflect. Did I miss anything essential? How did my mood shift? Did urgency decrease? And ask yourself, did anything in my life change in that time? This is not about ignorance, it's about agency.
And I love that because it sounds like fasting, but for the mind, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Fasting's good for us. Fasting's good for us. A little bit here and there. But yeah, good exercise.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us today. If this episode made an impact on you, please leave a like. If you think it could help anyone you know, please share it along. Also, it would really help us if you subscribed on whatever platform you're listening on. It helps us keep coming and bringing you up-to-date information and showing up for you twice a week. We appreciate all the support you guys have given. And please follow us on any channels that you seem to go to the most. You know, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're all there.
The greatest,
Check out
the greatest website ever.
newashla.com.
Because you can even watch, you can even listen to the shows from there.
Yeah. With love and gratitude. Ad Lucem.
Ad Lucem.